A good friend of mine, Fred Sutton, is going to come up and give a little update on some of the rent control issues that are going throughout the state. Fred is the public affairs director for the California Apartment Association. Prior to that, he was the government affairs director for AGLA. So me and Fred go way back. We attend a lot of meetings together. And he has some specific duties and things that he's working on. So Fred's going to share a little update on some of the things that he's doing in some of the other cities that have rumors of rent control, and he's been very successful with his team in fending off some initiatives. So Fred Sutton, and after that we'll give an update on some legislative bills. Thank you much. Let's hear Fred now.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. I really appreciate you having me. As mentioned, my name is Fred Sutton. I'm with the California Apartment Association, and we represent housing providers throughout the state of California, Sacramento, and here locally, and work with groups such as yours to work for good housing policy throughout the state. It's fantastic to hear your council members so unequivocally opposed to rent control. And actually what we're seeing throughout the state is a lot of city councils are understanding that it's bad policy for supply of housing and to solve the problems of increasing rents. Because rent control is not a new idea. It came around around World War II in the early 20th century, got steam in the late 70s, and then they got to test it for quite some time. And it was realized how detrimental it was to all aspects of society and housing. Now, the housing crisis is real. As was mentioned, there's just simply not enough units to meet demand of housing in the state. The state, according to the Department of Housing and Community Development in Sacramento, the state needs to build 1.8 million new units by 2025 to accommodate everybody that wants to live here. And rent control does not create a single new unit to help achieve that. And I think as housing providers, you guys have a fantastic understanding of the housing crisis. If you have one unit for lease, but two people looking, or two families looking, you can only take one. And that's a fundamental math that we're dealing with. So unfortunately, a lot of people with the rising rents here in Inglewood and a lot of other places that people are moving or want to be living in are looking for solutions. And they're clinging to rent control because it sounds fantastic. We'll just stop rents, no one wants the rents to rise, and it solves the problem. However, when you dig a little bit deeper, it's not only do the negatives far outweigh the benefits, it's actually counterproductive to its aims. I'm not going to go in depth on rent control. I'm happy to talk to anyone about that. I'm more here to discuss what's going on at the state level and the particular ordinance that is being circulated here in Inglewood. Last year was the first year that we started to see rent control in Southern California since basically 1978. In Northern California over the last several years, there's been a couple of rent control battles where the California Apartment Association, our allies, have been able to win the majority of them. And it's actually a very similar thing that we see in each of these cities. They go to the city council knowing the facts and everything before them, see it's not a good way forward for housing policy for the city. And then extreme groups go and file a petition to put on the ballot. And that's what's being gathered right now in the city of Inglewood. Long Beach is facing something similar. Glendale and Pasadena are also facing initiatives. So people are out actively right now gathering signatures. Your particular ordinance is a little different in some ways and much the same in some ways as other cities. And one of the things that's most disturbing about what we're seeing right now is they're not mandating vacancy decontrol in these ordinances.
What does that mean?
Yeah. I'll get there. So is everybody aware of Costa-Hawkins?
No.
Okay. Costa-Hawkins is a state law passed in 1995. It does three things. It prohibits rent control on new construction to incentivize new housing, so people will build new housing. It prohibits rent control on single-family homes and condos. So if you want to rent out your condo, if you leave for a year and you want to rent it out, it protects you from rent control in your single-family home. And it mandates vacancy decontrol. Prior to this law in 1994, cities such as Santa Monica and West Hollywood exercised vacancy control. Essentially, when a tenant moved out voluntarily, the city commanded the price that you were allowed to rent that unit at. You did not have marketability or discretionary ability whatsoever. So it was actually very successful at making rents the lowest rents in California in the 1980s. However, there were terrible side effects that came along with it. Again, I can go into them a little bit more if you want some literature on it. But we have not seen that kind of draconian rent control in 20 years in California. And a lot of these groups that are working towards this statewide have even said that they want things such as vacancy control, the ability to exercise vacancy control again. Which is incredibly disturbing. I mean, that is how people were actually going bankrupt in Santa Monica. You had independent rental owners in West Hollywood and Santa Monica going bankrupt. They actually created a law called the Ellis Act. You might hear about it from time to time. There's a law that came out of Santa Monica because a rental housing provider said, I no longer want to be in the multifamily industry. I want to do something else with my property. And Santa Monica tried to compel them to continue to rent at a loss. And so the state had to step in and create a law to allow them to change that property to whatever they felt like and leave the business. So there, at the state level, there's currently an effort to repeal Costa-Hawkins. They are out getting signatures right now. You may have seen them, they popped up in the paper. It will very likely be on the ballot. They have large funding. Michael Weinstein, who is, I believe he's chairman or president of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. It's $1 billion foundation. They've already spent millions of dollars for paid signature gatherers to go out and collect signatures to repeal Costa-Hawkins. And as I said, it only does 3 things. And it was brought about specifically to moderate the draconian forms of rent control you saw in the late 70s and 80s.
So would that be a good thing in essence, to repeal it?
To repeal Costa-Hawkins would be a terrible thing.
Yeah, devastating.
It would be devastating to any independent rental owner, and it would, not just independent rental owners, for anybody that wants to be able to live in Inglewood or anywhere in California. Rent control expansion will make it undeniably harder to live in these cities, not easier. Because when you start to restrict both physically and price control vacancies, it becomes significantly harder to find space. So with scarcity comes increases in prices. And even if you're commanding market rates like they were in Santa Monica, you had kind of this gray market that was very well documented in the 80s and early 90s, where you'd have someone they'd show their credit, high income thresholds, and they'd say, by the way, I will repair the carpet, I'll put in a new oven. And right there, even the economy will work its own way and a new market emerge to help people get an edge to get into those spaces that were so coveted. And people held on to them for years and years and years, much longer than normal market cycles. Because even if you were likely to go off and move, you are now actually at you're less incentivized to go possibly move to a nicer place because you're holding on to this subsidy. So the repeal of Costa-Hawkins is what has made rent control in Los Angeles, Santa Monica, and West Hollywood. Costa-Hawkins has made that manageable. You've been able to operate. Prior to that, you had independent rental owners going out of business. So on the state level, they're looking to repeal Costa-Hawkins. There's a group out there trying to do that. And then locally, you have a group here that is trying to put forth their local initiative. Again, state law protects you on a lot of elements, the most nefarious elements of this. But what they have in here is they have it written, they don't have it mandated that it would be vacancy control. They have it where a board that would be elected by the people, if this got implemented, could utilize whatever abilities they have within state law, which is an easy way of saying that if Costa-Hawkins is repealed, we want to be able to exercise that ability if we feel like it. Doesn't mean it's actually coming, but when it comes down to elected boards such as this, I would refer anyone to the city of Santa Monica. The city of Santa Monica has an elected board, which is what Inglewood is proposing. That board is probably one of the most hostile government bodies I've ever encountered. I've testified before it. I'm sure you've testified before it. They're right now actually having a conversation about plans that if Costa-Hawkins is repealed on the state level, that they will have vacancy control, or they've been discussing how they can get back to it. They've actually openly advocated for it, for the repeal of Costa-Hawkins. They're taking away the ability for local assessments and bonds to be passed through. In the city of Santa Monica, with rent control, you're only allowed to raise your rates up to CPI once a year, capped at $40. So the highest that you can ever raise your rent on an individual is $40. No matter what it is, no matter if your taxes are going up, no matter if your water, do you all pay for your own water? Or do all the tenants pay the water? Most of these older buildings, you are paying the water. In Santa Monica, you don't have the ability to pass that through. So local bonds and assessments, they've been discussing for the longest, the last 20 or so years, they've allowed housing providers to pass those through because it is the community that votes on those. And just last month, they actually took that ability away. So new assessments are no longer allowed to be passed through. These are the types of things you start to have to deal with in rent-controlled environments. Santa Monica's program is a $5 million bureaucracy. $4.3 million of that $5 million is salaries and benefits. When you think about what $5 million could do to go to direct subsidy emergency assistance, there are so many other things that we could look to and work towards to solve these housing problems, whether it's renters tax credits. Out of Denver, there's a program called Live Denver where they're utilizing new construction vacant units for temporary assistance. You could do emergency assistance, something similar to Section 8 for an individual that's been able to demonstrate an ability to pay regularly, and then they fall into some sort of economic hardship. There's things you could do with millions of dollars that I don't think are spent wisely. And the main reason I think about having you come here today is because this group that's here in Inglewood and these other cities, they're struggling to get people to join them and really catch on because their message is so extreme. But they're out there hitting the pavement. We're down in Long Beach, they depict rental owners as parasites and say these awful things about housing providers, thinking that it's some easy job and not understanding the tremendous service you house California. But these groups are gaining steam, and this body in here needs to be prepared if this makes the ballot. And a strategy in place. And my main reason for coming here is really to connect with this group so that we're together if it goes there. And if you are monitoring them to see how they're doing, I would love to know about it. Because the only way we're able to defeat these, and we have defeated these measures in Northern California, is through educating the populace on what rent control really is and what it really does. And that takes a lot of resources. Again, we're not there yet, but everyone in this room should be prepared to contribute financially to protecting their investment, but the city. And in Long Beach, that's what's been going on right now. I mean, they're raising tens of thousands of dollars to try to combat it through education of what this will really mean. Because tenants feel that this is going to be good for them. There's no denying that immediate direct subsidy for that individual. But for anybody else that wants to come in afterwards, if you have kids that are in college and want to move back, it's going to be harder. It will become more expensive. And the data and documentation is so thorough on this. It's so incredibly thorough. And it's just kind of being tossed out, no one, as if they don't care. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I kind of rambled on. But you're dealing with two major issues here, Costa-Hawkins and here locally. To be involved in the state fight, which you should all be following. It's a very simple website, www.savecostahawkins.com. Sign up for emails. You're not getting blasted a lot. It's just keeping you up to date where they are in the process. And they're raising millions of dollars to be able to educate California on how important that law is. Yes?
So our immediate strategy would be to raise our rents right now.
No. I I am not your business advisor, and I'm not, your lawyer or anything of that nature, but I'll let you know. So I worked on this in several cities. I worked on it in Glendale, I worked on it in Pasadena. And that's exactly what people ran out and did in Glendale. And what happens is when you do that, people run out, and all of a sudden you've now recruited somebody into the signature gatherer. You've created a story unnecessarily. Now, obviously, you need to make your own business decisions. But this group, I'm not here to scare everybody. I'm here to get you alert and make sure that you are attending these meetings. There's owners in this city that are not in this room. You need to make sure he has their email. Because everybody needs to start getting organized. That's the strategy I'm really here for. Is they're organizing and we need to organize. But that caused a lot of issues in Glendale that ultimately we were able to defeat. But it's not productive in that way. But again, I'm not your business advisor.
No, I was pointing over there, but you take it.
I got a question. So this was defeated in the state senate, and now they're trying to put it on the ballot. What's the guarantee that they even put it on the ballot? I mean, are they picking up that much steam?
Yeah, so they have, it was defeated in the state assembly. And like I said, most policy lawmakers throughout the state understand how terrible this is as a policy. Because of the back, so does anyone remember Measure S from the city of Los Angeles last year? Measure S was primarily backed by this gentleman, Michael Weinstein. Measure S was a no-growth measure in the city of Los Angeles. He spent millions of dollars. He lost, but he was able to ensure that it got on the ballot. When you have some serious backers that are connecting with these extreme, I don't even really consider them tenant advocates because I don't think they're advocating for tenants. When you have them connected, you have a very powerful ability to get it on the ballot. I mean, they're at every grocery store throughout the state right now.
Oftentimes on the ballots, the wording can be confusing. What are some key words or statements that we should look for to make sure that we don't vote against what we want to vote for?
That's what's very difficult. I believe the state ballot initiative, which is to repeal Costa-Hawkins, I believe it's called the Affordable Housing Act.
That's what it's called. That's why it sounds so good.
It's called the Affordable Housing Act. Who would not vote for that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's some of the real difficulty is letting people know. I don't know if it's been designated what its positioning will be yet. But we have to educate people on rent control is not an affordable mechanism because it has no basis on your ability to pay or income. You could hypothetically make $300,000 a year. And as an independent rental owner, you decided not to raise rents for the last 6 years because you have financial flexibility. Inglewood decided to vote for this and lock you into place what rents were 6 years ago for a gentleman that was never means tested. To answer the question on words, unfortunately, in politics, they're going to go for words that are attractive, even though it has nothing to do with affordability. It will undeniably make it more expensive for housing in the state. I can't give you. I can sign up for Costa-Hawkins, savecostahawkins.com. You'll get a lot of information for that. I don't know what the title and summary here is for this one. I can find out. I'll leave my cards here. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. I'll work with Malcolm and I'll actually send you the ordinance if you want to read it for yourself. It's about 55 pages or so. Yes.
Hi, yeah, there is, I have an opinion that there is something that's missing in our votes though, because there are regulations that are being imposed on developers that make it prohibitive for them to build, such as, I believe it's Measure JJJ or HHH,
City of LA.
which, in the City of LA, absolutely, the City of LA, not Inglewood, but the City of Los Angeles, but all of these regulations that are being passed by the constituents in which we are, right? We are taxpayers, right? So we vote in these, let's just say, regulations that causes builders to actually make it unaffordable for them to build. So this HHH or JJJ, I'm not even really sure what the alphabet is. It says that a developer who is building affordable housing must pay prevailing wages. Those two are mutually exclusive. You cannot have affordable housing and pay prevailing wages. So either developer's gonna go into bankruptcy intentionally, or they're not gonna build. So if there's a lack of supply, right, and the demand is rising, then prices are going to escalate. So it's up to us, in my opinion, the citizens of the state, to understand what these regulations are that we are passing, right, or allowing them to be passed, and the ramifications that they have on us, right?
And I think that's what, again, this is really for, so I'm here to scare you. It is to make sure that you're informed and that we're organized, because when you're organized, then you're a very powerful group. You always hear from tenant advocate groups that we're the majority of the population, renters are the majority of the population. But renters are not monolithic in their opinion. I find that actually very offensive, because you can be a renter and understand that price controls have never worked throughout the history of price controls. Yes?
Yeah, and that's kind of my question. What is the incentive for these people to want to rebuild the cost of living? What's the incentive?
What's the end game?
Well, I can't speak for the groups there, but I think they genuinely believe that this is the way to have affordable housing, is that we just stop the market of housing, we just command it. And then they'll have other solutions that go there. I think, personally, throughout history, we have been able to see how much housing we've been able to build through private capital. I mean, private capital is what's created housing throughout California. Sure, there's issues that need to be worked out. There are serious issues we're working on, but it's private capital that has provided all these jobs, created these livelihoods. And I also don't think they understand that an apartment complex, whether it's a triplex or a 30-unit building, is its own economic hive. I mean, you have plumbers, gardeners, carpenters, laundry repairmen there every single week. Rent control, think about what happens if someone took away your financial flexibility. You may have had janitorial twice a week. Okay, well, let's say janitorial twice a week. With janitorial once a week, well, we can cut that back to once every other week. You may have a pool man that comes twice during the summer, and we'll cut that back to regular winter hours. He'll just come by once a week. Those have serious ripple effects to the very people that are either working their way up the economic ladder, they may have their own business. I mean, you're your own economic hive. That apartments and multifamily rental owners contribute billions and billions and billions of dollars to the economy. So the end game is it feels good. Rent control feels good, and it's very tough to fight those emotional pulls, because we have to have long discussions like this on really what it means. Because for everything you do, there's a reaction equal opposite reaction, right? Isn't that? Any other questions? Well, thank you so much. I'm going to leave my cards here. You need to let your neighbors know that are involved, that own rental housing, or your management companies, that they need to be paying attention. If you have a management company that's not Malcolm, and they're not sending you just general updates, I'm not saying inundate you, but they're not paying attention, your management company's not taking care of you. Because they're there to help protect your investment and protect your housing. And thank you everyone for the jobs that you do as housing providers. So thank you so much.